Who are the most influential directors of all time? Even if you've never seen any of their films, you've at least seen their influences throughout movies and television. Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan, George Lucas, Quentin Tarantino have all made their mark on the industry, but one thing that connects them all is that they're from the English-speaking world. What about foreign directors? If there's just one foreign director you'd like to know about, it's the one who's made a huge impact on not just on their native country, but also on the West, including those directors I just named. So from the land of the rising sun, aka Japan, came Akira Kurosawa. In this video we'll be talking about his masterpiece, Seven Samurai. While Akira Kurosawa had started working in movies in the 1930s, it was in the 40s in post-war Japan where his work became acclaimed domestically and internationally. In 1948's Drunken Angel, he cast a relatively unknown actor named Toshiro Mifune, who would go on to be Kurosawa's muse and star of many of his films. He followed this up with the 1950s Rashomon, which won the Golden Lion at the Venice Festival and the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film, and as a result, it brought Japanese cinema to a global audience. This prestige gave Kurosawa the much needed creative liberty, as Japan was under US occupation at the time, when all forms of media were heavily restricted and censored for themes and imagery that didn't suit the geopolitics at the time. This was part of the impact of Kurosawa's work, as they helped Japanese audiences reconcile themselves with their recent past and the state of the country it was currently in. Whether he set his films in historical or contemporary settings, Kurosawa's stories and characters carried themes of identity, old versus new, individualism, moralism, spiritual journeys, the tragedies of war, and even nationalism, though not in a way that supported Japanese imperialism. All this can be seen a few years later when Kurosawa made his most ambitious film yet, and that would go on to define his career and that of Japanese cinema for decades to come. That movie is Seven Samurai. The premise for Seven Samurai is simple. A gang of bandits plan to raid a mountain village after they harvest their crops. Having hidden and overheard them, the villagers travel down to a nearby town and manage to hire 7 ronin who are samurai without master and who agree to defend the village from those bandits. The story alone isn't what makes the film stand out, but combined with the characters, themes, costumes, sets and filmmaking techniques, it made it into something quite unique. Toshiro Mifune appeared in the film, but wasn't typecast in his usual roles. Rather than a gruff veteran or leader, he actually plays the inexperienced and sometimes comical character of Kikuchuyo. Then there's the character of Kanbei. He's an experienced ronin and de facto leader of the group. He's played by Takashimo Shimura, another recurring actor in Kurosawa's movies. He also starred in the first 2 Godzilla movies. Kanbei is joined by his old friend Shichiroji, and Gorobe, who acts as second in command, and Katsuyuro, a young samurai who takes on as a disciple. Lastly, there is Heihachi, a less skilled but supportive ronin, and a skilled swordsman named Kyuzo. Kurosawa even created his own special effects, such as rain or burning buildings. Sure, you could see these things in high-budget Hollywood productions at the time, but those were created through specialized machines and techniques that would make those environmental effects appear controlled and artificial. Partly due to working with smaller budget, Kurosawa had to make do what he had. Small houses were built for scenes involving burning huts, and once they lit them, it was for real. They only had one chance to get the shot right. Despite these limitations, the movie went over budget several times. Kurosawa pioneered the multi-camera system, in which cameras would track characters they moved around the environment, while deep focus lenses would make sure that backgrounds were captured clearly as well. Several cameras would shoot the same thing at the same time, giving the editors footage from different perspectives to use in these editing processes. Editing was another key point. During action scenes, Kurosawa and his editors knew when to continue tracking shot or change to another angle to keep the action flowing in a dynamic way. And during scenes with multiple characters, they would show several close-ups of characters' faces to show what they were feeling at the moment. All this is helped by the music. Rather than a grand score, the music goes for a more subtle and more careful approach. Each major group gets themed to match their characteristics. Villagers get a more simple tone for their mundane way of life. Samurais come off as mostly restrained and dignified, while the bandits are foreboding and unpredictable. Also during heightened moments, the music times itself with the action and editing style, while also avoiding being melodramatic during sadder moments. The soundtrack is made up of a mix of contemporary and traditional instruments in order to reflect the mix of modern and historical themes of the film. In terms of historical accuracy, the film carries the spirit of the time period it portrays, but it's not trying to be a historical documentary. It's set in 1586, during Japan's Sengoku period. The country had been embroiled in civil wars for centuries, and due to central government collapsing and several feudal lords vying for more local control or trying to become the central government, as a result, local law and order was in flux. People in rural areas had to depend on each other and protect themselves from bandits who would often pillage undefended villages. Due to their frequent involvement in these conflicts, the samurai would eventually be raised to high status in Japan's rigid class system, and this would create some tension in the story. Many also became ronin, a samurai without a master. If the people or domains they served were gone, It would therefore make sense that the villagers could find multiple Ronin to approach and offer something they lost. You even see the bandits make use of firearms, which had been introduced to Japan centuries prior and used extensively in conflicts. However, the exact dynamics between the 7 samurai and villagers have a more romantic viewpoint rather than being realistic. They also follow the samurai code of Bushido, which similarly to the knight code in chivalry in the West, is based more on the romanticized depiction in media, written centuries after they were gone and historical accuracy was not a priority. Also, the attacks by the bandits are staged to be closer in action scenes, especially in the final attack being designed to be a climatic battle that would end the conflict for good. This was intentional. At the time, the samurai still held a revered and romanticized image in popular sentiments for centuries, but decades before, the Bushido code was formally adopted and changed by the Japanese military, which go on to conquer much of East and Southeast Asia, using brutal tactics and a twisted version of the Bushido. Kurosawa, as well as several other directors at the time, wanted to make films that looked at historical and contemporary issues in a more realistic tone. But at the same time, they didn't want to completely alienate the Japanese audience, who still enjoyed the old ways of depicting samurai. Instead, Kurosawa chose to make a film that is set in a historical time period and use a lot of common tropes but depicting them through a more realistic lens. While historical accuracy and entertainment are important parts of what makes a film great, they are used as a conduit for relevant issues and thoughts at the time. These not only make it stand out from other samurai films, but would also set a precedent for future films that would have to follow. The movie has deeply human elements, which were unusual for Japanese and even Western films at the time about stories of heroism. This can be felt in 7 Samurai, depicting them as flawed people who make mistakes, fight amongst each other and die in unexpected ways. They are Ronin, therefore not proper samurai or parallels to knights in the West. Samurai normally serve someone high standing, which was seen as a very honourable and safe position to hold. You see this during the initial recruitment, as some skilled Ronin chose not to join because they want to serve a lord, and there's some tension for those who do end up joining. But these 7 who chose to join and help the villagers, which others see as beneath them, can only pay them in food and lodgings. Each of them have their own reason for helping, but it's clear that they're willing to risk their lives for these villagers. By the end of the film, the remaining samurai aren't treated as heroes, and the villagers happily raise their crops. The samurais don't mind though, as they know the true victors in all of the villagers. But in spite of its plot and vision, the film can have moments of humour and romance as well. The characters do banter, have fun. There's even a romantic subplot between the younger samurai and a village girl. While these elements can be a little distracting for some feel like they contribute to the movie's massive runtime, they also show that these characters are people, and that they have lives and views on others that don't need directly impacting the plot. All these elements of their own were very impressive and didn't amount to much, but together created something that they hadn't seen before then and rarely again since. The film, as well as several others of Kurosawa's, were highly influential to Western movies. The most obvious is The Magnificent Seven, a direct remake of 7 Samurai. But there's also A Fistful of Dollars, which is an unofficial remake of Kurosawa's 1961 film Yojimbo, which establishes Sergio Leone as the quintessential Western director and Clint Eastwood's Man with a No Name as the most iconic character of all Westerns. A less obvious copy of Kurosawa is the very first Star Wars film, which you might not notice, but if you rewatch Episode 4, particularly the first act in Tatooine, you'd see Kurosawa's influence everywhere. George Lucas actually based much of the script of the film on Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress. Even Star Wars' most iconic editing technique, the screen wipe, can be seen in 7 Samurai. The Godfather may not have direct parallels, but you see how new Hollywood directors such as Coppola learned from Kurosawa's magnum opus. A rich historical setting, a diverse cast of some of the greatest actors of that era, a story of close friends and family trying to survive in an unfair and violent world. Many times these films would go over budget, were too experimental, or finished past expected schedules. Yet the filmmakers didn't stop, because films like 7 Samurai showed that achieving ambitious visions was possible, even with limitations, and the end result would change cinema forever. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Also subscribe to my channel to support me making more content.